Welcome. I'm your host, Troy Hutchison of Arizona Wildcats on SI, and today we'll be talking about Arizona baseball, the run the Wildcats had to Omaha, Chip Hale's contract extension, and a little U of A basketball in terms of Carter Bryant getting drafted number 14 overall to the San Antonio Spurs. So let's talk about the Wildcats in terms of baseball. Arizona going into the postseason wasn't looking so hot. They struggled against Utah and Houston to close out the year. Really was that weekend against Houston where things started to turn around. They lost the first game in a tough one, and then were able to win the series against the bottom level team in the Houston Cougars. They go into the Big 12 tournament, win three straight games, beating TCU in the Big 12 championship game, and things kind of started to roll for Arizona. You got the offense clicking, the bullpen really doing its work and keeping the team in games, and the starting pitching kind of turning it around. It's something that really they didn't see all year in terms of the starting pitching. Smith Bailey was phenomenal throughout many parts throughout the season, but kind of struggled as well. But going into the postseason, it was a different dude. He looked really in control, was able to go deep into games, and really commanded the strike zone. So you go into the regionals, Arizona doesn't have to face the host seed Oregon, and they're able to get out of that. I mean, Cal Poly and other teams like that. I mean, phenomenal job by Arizona taking care of business and advancing to the first super regional underneath Coach Chip Hale. You handle business against North Carolina after dropping the first game 18-1. The Wildcats were able to bounce back, winning the last two in an error by the second baseman of North Carolina to really help the Cats advance in that third game. And then it's off to Omaha. You know, it's a run that I don't think many Arizona fans saw coming. I know I didn't expect it to come. I thought at best this was a super regional team, depending on the matchup. We really haven't seen a lot of postseason success for Chip Hale during his 3 years with the Wildcats, now fourth season in that tenure. And so you just didn't know what to expect. But to credit to him, credit to his coaching staff, and credit to the players for a lack of a better word, bearing down and coming together and really battling back against North Carolina. And, that's something that Arizona's kind of been doing all season long in terms of battling back, losing the first game of a series, especially in Big 12 play, and then winning the series, the last two. Just a phenomenal job by the bullpen, a phenomenal job by the offense, and they got great starting pitching. You go to Omaha, and everything was talked about in terms of, can Arizona get quality starts? They figured Arizona's bullpen was going to be solid. A lot of people talked about the offense being there, but the question was, could you get quality starts? And they did in both games. Again, Smith Bailey was phenomenal. You had another great start in there as well. But the bullpen, it kind of got overused down the stretch of the season. And that's where Arizona saw problems, was in that eighth inning where they just collapsed against Coastal Carolina, collapsed against Louisville, some defensive errors in those games as well, and just not enough offense and not enough offense in key situations with the bases loaded. So their run came to an end, 0-2 in Omaha. But for Chip Hale, a guy that not only has coached Arizona the last 4 years, played for the university, won a World Series in 1986, to help lead his program back to the College World Series for the first time since Jay Johnson left Tucson. Just a phenomenal job and a well-deserved, success for Chip. With that all being said, guys like Mason White had a phenomenal postseason. You saw his draft stock go up. Local kid that finishes, I believe, number 2 all time in home runs for Arizona. Then you have Summerhill, who kind of got dinged up throughout the season, didn't look like himself at the leadoff spot down the stretch. I don't think you're going to change the lineup too much, regardless if guys are banged up. You get nicks and bruises throughout the season, so you just got to battle through it. But it kind of seemed to pile on top for him in terms of quick at-bats. It just didn't look like his normal self. And, the offense just couldn't come through with clutch hits there in Omaha. But overall, a successful season for Chip Hale and his program. With that, Chip Hale got a 4-year contract extension. extremely well deserved. And, this is a guy you want to lock up for the future. With the portal closing in a couple days, he was able to keep the majority of their roster despite, seeing a few guys enter the portal that really weren't key players or starters for Arizona. And then, of course, you lost some guys to the MLB draft. That's going to happen. And you want that to happen to have a successful program. So, phenomenal job by Chip Hale. And good on Desiree Reed Francois, the athletic director, to get the contract extension done for Chip. The future looks bright for Arizona baseball. Now, let's transition to Arizona basketball. Not a lot's going on in terms of the day-to-day stuff with the season being in the dead period. Tommy Lloyd coaching the USA Basketball U19 team with Koa Pete on the roster. They've had some really good games the last couple of days, but I wanted to focus on Carter Bryant. Carter Bryant came into Arizona as a 4-star recruit on many recruiting services, a guy that I've seen in person when he was in high school in Section 7, and you looked at him and you thought, that's a 5-star kid. If he figures out how to be more dominant with the basketball in terms of demanding the basketball, that the talent was there. He had his ups and downs throughout Arizona, his time at Arizona, his freshman season. But all in all, it was a great freshman campaign for Carter Bryant. 6.5 points per game isn't going to stand out to you, but he shot near 38% from the three-point line, which is a phenomenal rate for a freshman. One of the better three-point shooters on the roster. He was an elite defender, could guard 1 through 5, and a terrific rebounder. The athleticism is what stands out for Carter Bryant. It's similar to an Andre Iguodala, where he could do a lot of things and at a high level and needs to develop a little bit offensively. But you have the tools of a making to have a great NBA player and a long career with Carter Bryant. And so the San Antonio Spurs saw that. Carter got drafted number 14 overall to the Spurs. And at the beginning of the season, I don't think many people had him going in the first round. And at the end of the year, it was around that 20 to 30 range where Carter was ending up. But some sites had him as high as number 10 in terms of the pre-draft, mock drafts. And you saw Carter get passed over by the Phoenix Suns. That seemed to be the key spot right there, but they couldn't pass on Malawak. And now he fell to the San Antonio Spurs at 14. But it's kind of the perfect fit. Arizona hasn't had a player drafted to San Antonio since Sean Elliott. And that worked out tremendously for the Spurs. Sean having a 12-year NBA career, 11 years spent in San Antonio, 2-time All-Star, and a NBA Finals champion. So tremendous career for Sean Elliott there. And, I'm not saying Carter Bryant is Sean Elliott, but they have that similar mindset of doing whatever the team needs to win. If you want them to defend, they can do it. If you need them to shoot a three-pointer, they can do it. If you need the rebound, if you need a hustle play, they can do it. Carter's that type of dude that will do the dirty work, and that's the type of player San Antonio loves. And you look at the roster right now with De'Aaron Fox, Victor Wembanyama, and some other young talent they drafted, Harper with the 2nd overall pick. There's a lot to love about that roster. Now, I don't think, that he's going to start. You have Harrison Barnes. You have other guys on San Antonio's roster that probably would start. And he might even see time in the G League. A lot of players do, even in the lottery. But here's a guy that I think by the end of the season in Bryant that could be a major contributor for San Antonio as they look to try to make the playoffs for the first time in a while. And not having Greg Popovich around. But I think it's a great situation for Carter Bryant. I think it's a spot where they develop players. They teach you the right things about basketball. And it's going to be low-key. You're not in New York. You're not in L.A. You're not in Miami. You're not going to have the spotlight on you. San Antonio does a great job of really making sure their players are low-key and not a lot of attention around them. And they just go out and win. They go out and develop. That's been their MO for as long as I could remember. But I think that's the perfect situation for a developing rookie like Carter Bryant. And I think you're going to see a guy that has that potential to have a 12, 14-year career in the NBA. I think his floor is a 3-and-D guy and a 6th or 7th man off the bench. I think his ceiling, though, You have star potential there. Maybe not superstar potential, but like Andre Iguodala. Andre was a star player for the 76ers and was the lead guy for the Denver Nuggets. And I think you could see that kind of with Carter Bryant, where you're the guy on the roster at some point in time. I know Victor Wembanyama is a tremendous talent, but we've seen these 7-footers get hurt before. And, I'm not wishing ill on Victor Wembanyama. I think he's great, and I think he's going to have a good career. But Carter's a guy that you could really develop and turn into one of your potential top 3, top 4 players on the roster. And that translates into championships, his style of play. So look for Carter Bryant to turn it up in the summer league this year. We're going to watch him and see what he could do in the summer league. And it's a guy that, again, I think there's a lot of potential, and we'll see what his career has. But again, this is Troy Hutchison with Arizona Wildcats on SI. I appreciate you listening, and we'll have more later.